Now then, Vinyl Monkey here again. Something slightly different now. I've been, I think for the last, well, I don't know, a dozen or so videos. This is my 50th one, by the way. You'd think they'd get better, wouldn't you? But anyway, the last dozen or so I've been sort of ranking me top or worst to best or top 10 or whatever of various artists, from T-Rex to Elton John to Captain Beefheart and beyond. But I've sort of run out of artists where I've got a comprehensive enough collection of their material to do that, because I've got a lot of them are on CD, and I'm rarely going to buy them twice. I'm rarely going to rebuy them on vinyl. So I've sort of run out of artists to do that comprehensive ranking thing. So I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to go through the years, picking my sort of top 10 from particular years, and I'm going to start with 1966. Probably the reason I'm going to start with 1966 is that was when I think I first really became aware of pop rock music and sort of started getting even slightly excited about it. And I think that was probably, there wasn't much music played in our house. My dad was Harry Seacombe, Jim Reeves, you know, that was about as far out as it got on our radiogram. The radio, I can't remember the radio really playing much in the house, not music wise. And we didn't get a television until 1966, just before the World Cup final. And I don't know whether that was, we were very late subscribers to everything in our house, probably through poverty, but partly through probably my dad's sort of attitude to anything new. But anyway, we just got a television. And Top of the Pops, you know, I just remember seeing Top of the Pops, and I vaguely remember the Beatles, and I don't know, I can't remember what it might have been Paperback Writer, or anyway, it was a hit they had in 1966, and I remember watching it just absolutely spellbound. And I think I said to my mum and dad at the time, I said something like, "Why are they smiling?" And my dad, who rarely swore in front of me mum, said, "Because they're taking the piss out of everyone who's buying their records, that's why they're smiling." So you can sort of gather what his attitude to popular music was. You should have heard him when David Bowie came on a few years later doing Starman, but anyway, that's another story. So anyway, I'm going to start with 1966. I'm only talking about the records I've got here, my favourite 10 from my collection. And obviously I haven't got every record made in 1966. And the other point I'll make is that many of the classic records, particularly from the 60s, I've actually got on CD rather than on vinyl. So I mean, 66 was an unbelievable year. I mean, it was the year of the Beatles' Revolver, Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. I mean, unbelievable year. In terms of, you know, you're talking about these albums in the top 10 of anybody's list, and of course I've got those albums, but I've got them on CD. So my top 10s are going to feature a bit more of an eclectic mix. Hopefully they might sort of jog you into having a look at something or listen to something that you maybe haven't come across for a while or before. But anyway, here goes. And I thought I'd say what my least favourite one from each year is as well, just to start with. And I couldn't make my mind up. I was gonna say the Poor Old Seekers, but Judith Durham died not so long back, and I've just given this another listen to. And although it's not my cup of tea, this is Come the Day. It's not really my cup of tea, and it's a bit twee and a bit folky and all the rest of it. But they do beautiful harmonies. She is a lovely singer. So I'm not going to say the sea, because I'm going to, I'll put that one there. But I think my least favourite, the one I'm likely to play least, is Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. Billy J. Kramer was part of the sort of early Mersey sort of scene. Really sort of throwaway pop. Very pleasant in small doses, but not an LP full of it for me. So Billy J. Kramer, probably my least favourite from the 60s. So without further ado, I'll go through my top 10. And my number 10 from '66 is the Monkees' debut album. I was hesitant about putting this in at all because the Monkees, obviously a fabricated band. They were made. There were auditions. There were people who wanted to do a TV series. I think they were originally going to cast the Loving Spoonful as a band, but anyway, they wanted to handpick sort of people for it. And the Monkees, who were Dave Jones, Mike Nesmith, Peter Tork, and Mickey Dolenz, were picked, but they were, as I said, they were a fabricated band. Their songs were generally written by, I'm not even sure there's a credit on here. You know what, I've forgotten. It's two guys who sort of were involved in the creation of the series. But the reason I've included it is actually the great songs. And the Monkees do nothing but sing on here. I think Peter Tork might play guitar on one track or something, but you had session musicians in who aren't even credited on the album, which is disgraceful, really. But there are just some great songs on here. Not least the theme from the Monkees and The Last Train to Clarksville. Really good stuff. Well crafted pop. Well sung, particularly Mickey Dolenz, who I think he had a real good sort of pop, soft rock voice, really. So that's my number 10 from '66, the Monkees' debut album. Now, as well, I wouldn't normally include greatest hits. I don't usually buy greatest hits albums because, I don't know, I think I like to look at an artist's work in terms of what they've crafted, they've, to a lesser or greater extent, composed and compiled an album. Where greatest hits are usually, it's a compilation made by the record company for commercial reasons. But anyway, I've got a couple in my 1966. You probably won't see any more in the future after this, I don't think. But this is my number 9. This is the Fantastic Temptations' greatest hits. It's probably a bit premature because I think some of the Temptations' best stuff, the stuff written by Norman Whitfield and co, came after this, but it still includes some great tracks. There was still a great Motown band. It includes the absolutely stunningly beautiful My Girl, one of my go-tos on jukeboxes anywhere, and mainly written by Smokey Robinson, most of this stuff, but it's absolutely classic early Motown soul. Temptations' greatest hits, my number 9. Let's get the other greatest hits out the way. This is the incomparable, Bob Dylan. I mean, this, if this was put out as an album rather than the greatest hits, it would undoubtedly be the greatest album of all time. I mean, there are 12 songs on here. Every single one an absolute classic. This is his first greatest hits compilation. Again, I've got most of Dylan's 70s and later albums on vinyl, but his 60s stuff I tend to have on CD. So I'm including this because as my number 8, it really, you could stick it as number 1 of all time with the stuff that's on here. It includes the absolute 5 minutes 59 seconds of classic perfection that is like a Rolling Stone. But as I say, every single track of the 12 on here, an absolute stunning classic. Bob Dylan's greatest hits, my number 8. Now, my number 7, this is Buffy Sainte-Marie. From Buffy Sainte-Marie, actually born across the border in Canada, but spent most of her life in the USA. Born on an Indian reservation, she was a Cree Indian. As I understand, she was actually, as was government policy at the time, she was removed from her natural parents and given or sold to an American couple. And she became an activist. She's a great writer. She's a musician. She's wrote most of the tracks on this album. This is Little Wheels Spin and Spin. It includes the absolutely heartbreaking My Country, 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying. Some brilliant sort of protest songs. Let me just check me notes here. Yeah, it's powerful, it's angry, it's beautiful, it's bold, and it sort of highlights the scandal of the American genocide, really, which it's rich to hear the Americans talking about the Chinese and the Uyghurs and others around the world when, in the not too distant past, absolute genocide across their nation. And Buffy Sainte-Marie highlights that and sings about it in a beautiful, if angry, way. So that's my number 7. My number 6 is again the incomparable voice of Dionne Warwick. This is a live concert in Paris. She did 5 nights in early '66 in the Paris Olympia, and this was brought out pretty much straight away after this, just a week or so after that. She's introduced on this live album by Sacha Distel, and she does a really charming sort of duet with them. But yeah, this is typical Dionne Warwick. It's effortless, it's easy, it's classy. It's just absolutely sweet stuff. So my number 6, Dionne Warwick, in Paris, with Sacha Distel. My number 5, the unbelievable voice that is Tim Buckley. This is his debut album. If you listen to the opener on this, it sounds like it could almost come from his son Jeff Buckley's great album Grace. It's jazzy, it's sort of a bit trippy, it's sort of jazz folk, shimmery sort of stuff, and then those beautiful, stunning vocals all over the octaves or whatever. He's backed on here by Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns, which is I'm reading there. Of course he's not backed by Booker T and the MGs. He's backed by a band that play really well in a sort of dozy love sort of style. The thing that spoils it a little bit for me is the orchestration is a little bit over the top for my liking. He was only 19 when he made this album. He was to die 9 years later with a heroin overdose. It's not his best album, but it's a good album. It's a great debut. That's Tim Buckley, his debut album. My number 4. Sorry, I was talking about Booker T and the MGs. I've got me records mixed up. They actually back in Otis Redding along with the Memphis Horns on this album. Otis Redding, the soul album. This is typical Otis Redding. It was about a year before he died tragically in a plane crash. He was only 26, I think, when he made. Not 25, I think, when he made this album. He was 26 when he died. It's a brilliant sort of fusion of soul, R&B, gospel, blues. It's just it makes his voice makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Absolutely brilliant. So, about 4 of his own tracks on here that he's composed himself, and then some brilliant reinterpretations as well. And that's my number 4, Otis Redding, the soul album. My number 3 is Lee Morgan, Search for the New Land. This is 6 original Lee Morgan compositions. Lee Morgan on trumpet, of course, Wayne Shorter playing tenor sax, Grant Green on guitar, Herbie Hancock on piano, and then the rhythm section, Reggie Workman and Billy Higgins. And it's loose, it's spacious, it's on the one hand it's experimental, it's sort of at the back end of the hard bop, post bop, jazz sort of scene. But on the other hand, it's catchy and it's accessible, and that looseness, that spaciousness in this record gives loads of space for brilliant solos. And then behind those solos, there's just some beautiful, incredible piano chords which are sort of dense, cloudy, shady sort of chords I was describing, played on the piano by Herbie Hancock. So it's an absolute lovely post-bop, I suppose you'd call it, jazz album. Lee Morgan, Search for the New Land, my number 3. My number 2 is another debut album. This is by Cream, the first of the sort of rock supergroups, and I think this, some people say this album, and I can hear it in here, sort of presaged sort of heavy rock. This is Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, of course, brought together from various bands, and I just love Bruce's playing on here, and Baker's absolutely pounding, primal sort of drumming, brilliant stuff. And it's a mix of sort of blues and hardish blues rock and psychedelic poppy rock. Really, it's if you want to criticise it, you'd maybe say it's a bit of an uneven mix, but it's really good. This is a great sounding version. This is an original pressing from 1966, and it's in really good nick, and it sounds absolutely beautiful. So I've got that as my number 2, Cream, Fresh Cream. My number 1 album then, from 1966, is the absolutely beautiful Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil. Some of the same musicians that were on the album by Lee Morgan. So Wayne Shorter obviously on sax, tenor sax, Freddie Hubbard this time on trumpet, Herbie Hancock again on piano, and Ron Carter and Elvin Jones on the rhythm section. This is probably a little bit more out there than the Lee Morgan album I mentioned at number 3. Shorter and Hubbard are sort of, just stunning, challenging but beautiful solos. And then amongst that, Hancock, again, absolutely standout performance on this album from Hancock, but very different to the Lee Morgan album. Instead of those sort of dense, shady chords, it's more sort of fluttering solos, done very lightly and subtly, but beautifully. And it's just one of those albums I can go back to. This one, it's a real stunning album, an absolute jazz classic. That's Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil, my number 1 from 1966. Okay, well, I hope you found something interesting in there. It's 1967 last time. I think I was also going to mention some events of the years and everything, and of course it was the year. I'll mention this because politics is current. We've just got the current government are imploding as I speak here. Hopefully not to last too much longer. But 66 was the year when Harold Wilson won an election with a massively increased majority. And I think, there's a new biography just come out of Wilson, and I think he was a political hero of mine, and I think he was his achievements, I think, as political achievements and social political achievements have perhaps been understated in history. But anyway, I'll try and get me act together and put these things in order for next time, which will be 1967. Thanks for listening. Cheers.